Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be making an activity for new intake skaters, and I'm going to take you through it because it covers some really interesting things and it goes into quite a lot of depth. So I want to start this by sharing kind of a little story, which is that when I first started skating roller derby, this is going back about 10 years, there was a thread on our forum, and the thread was would it be possible to block someone skating backwards? And we had this kind of long thread of whether or not it would be possible, and none of us were particularly strong backward skaters, so the consensus was that in theory it was possible, but it would be a very difficult thing to do, right? So fast forward a couple of years and then everybody's doing it. Like, blocking backwards really isn't something that is difficult to do, or is considered highly difficult to do nowadays in roller derby. And I want to think about like what changed in that time. And I think one of the most important things that changed is an expectation of what we were able to achieve, right? So when I began skating, there just wasn't any expectation that a person would turn around and block somebody. Like, it wasn't something that was considered a skill that you would learn, right? Nowadays, rookies will come out of their min skills and they're almost doing it already. Even if you don't really teach it in your min skills, you know, some of them will see it and they'll pick it up and they'll want to do it. And I think that that change is so important. And the way that you inform the expectations of a new skater has enormous consequences. And it's really important to get that right. And this drill that we're going to talk about today is something that just really quietly cuts to the very heart of that. And it sets a lot of groundwork that will have your skaters doing more than they know they can do, but it will do it very softly in a way that they kind of don't recognize. So I'm going to create the drill. It's called push-pull. And push-pull is a very simple drill. Skaters will learn to skate forward and backward in a pair. And how it works is that two skaters skate together, and if you've ever coached someone when they're learning to skate backwards, and you might just hold their forearms, and then you'll hold their forearms and skate forwards, and they'll be moving backwards, but what will happen is that you are controlling the momentum. So they're not having to generate a lot of backwards force, you're kind of giving them a little push, and they're also not having to balance too much because you're balancing them at the forearms. And what we're going to do in this is the pairs are going to do exactly that, but it's going to be new intake skaters, and they're going to be working in pairs, and they're just going to be very kind of slowly skating backwards and forwards, kind of pushing and pulling each other, just gently holding at the forearms. So I'm going to put in here, skaters will skate backward and forward, supporting each other at the forearm. Cool. Now, to begin with, they're just going to do the width of the track. So to begin with, they're just going to be traveling sort of 12 feet kind of backwards and forwards, supporting each other at the forearm. And what's going to happen here is that there are so many soft skills that they're going to pick up from this drill that they're not going to realize are actually highly advanced skills, right? So one of the first ones is they're going to get very comfortable with the idea that when you skate, you can skate in multiple directions, right? You can skate forwards and backwards, but we're doing it in a way where we're not really telling them that. And this is super key, because when new intake are new, they're going to be on slightly high alert. They're going to be looking for reasons to be afraid. At least some of them will. And if you say to them, okay guys, we're going to skate backwards, a lot of them they're going to have like a little panic. They're going to get tense. They're going to feel like, oh, I can't do this. Whereas in this drill, you just very softly, you're not even telling them they're going to learn to skate backwards. You're just going to say, you're just going to learn to push and pull. And it's very, very soft, and it just eases them into that kind of space where the direction that they're skating in is not a big deal, right? That expectation that you only skate forwards is removed. and skating backwards is introduced in a very soft way, and it's kind of a little bit sneaky because it's really just telling them through actions that they can skate in all kinds of different directions. Okay, the next thing they're going to do is, once they've done just across the width of the track, we're going to introduce some communication. So after they've done this on the width of the track, skaters will perform this on the track and communicate to each other faster, slower, change. So they're going to be doing this drill on the track and they're going to be talking to each other. And you can start to see how many Derby skills are coming out in this very simple drill. They're learning quietly about bracing and about pushing and pulling other players. Now they're learning about skating backwards without really realizing that they're learning about it. And now they're learning about communication. So during this drill, they can feed each other instructions. They can say faster, slower, or change. When they say faster, by the way, it's always going to be the person skating backwards who gives the instructions. And that person skating backwards is going to be in control. So if they're very new and they're literally only just toddling backwards, that's fine. They can just say, okay, slower, slower, a little bit faster. And some of them will literally just be kind of, almost walking. That's totally fine. Like, it's their first time. They don't need to be doing this with any pace or anything like that. So they can control that speed to a point where they're comfortable, and they can also say change. And change will mean that they're going to change direction. The other person is going to skate backwards. So when they're calling this out, there's a lot of room for those two skaters to be talking to each other, to be passing instructions about what they're comfortable with, about where they want to go. And the person skating forwards is going to make sure that they're looking ahead and passing information to the other person. So they might want to say, like, oh, we'll slow down, there's somebody in front of us, etc. Lastly, the other skill that they're going to accidentally pick up from this drill is Derby stops. Now, Derby stops are really important for skating backwards, and they're just a really good all-round stop to have. And what I do, or what I like to see as a coach, is that the skaters will not even be told this and they'll just pick it up. And if they're struggling to slow it down, don't make it a thing. Don't say like, oh, now we're going to do the Derby stop. Just say, oh yeah, just put your toe stop down, it'll be fine. And almost just skate away. And just, when you're doing that, you're delivering this expectation to them that a Derby stop is something they can do because it's not a big deal. And that's a really important expectation. Now, when they're first doing this drill in their first session, you're going to have some wobbly skaters, you're going to have kind of some more confident skaters, you're going to have a big mix. But when they do this drill regularly, over time, they're just going to understand that moving forwards, moving backwards, bracing, using communication, and using Derby stops is just kind of par for the course. And I like to do this on their very first session, because even if they're doing it very, very slowly, even if they're just kind of just toddling around doing it, it's just going to set a whole bunch of expectations that are a lot bigger than the expectations that were set for me when I started, but also it's done in such a quiet way that you're just softly telling those skaters, oh, by the way, you're going to communicate, you're going to brace, you're going to skate forwards and backwards, and you're going to Derby stop. Now, if you told all of those skaters that on their first session, they would just panic. So the way you deliver those expectations is important. If you do it in this really quiet way, all that's going to happen is that they will just never know that these things are a big deal. For them, skating backwards, communicating, bracing, and Derby stopping will just be something that they've always been expected to do, right? And that shift in expectations can be really game-changing. It just kind of, it completely changes the way that skater is going to approach the sport, and what they're going to understand is a difficult thing to do. Because when I was beginning, I understood that skating backwards was a really difficult thing to do. When the reality is, skating backwards isn't much harder than skating forwards. There's just this kind of mental block to overcome, and there's just a little bit of coaching to get you there. Okay, so learning assessment, I want to see skaters talking. So skaters will talk to each other. That's the really important thing that I want to see. That's the thing that I'm going to correct if I see it as a coach. And take instruction as well from each other. And apart from that, I'm just going to leave it there for now. This is just a very simple drill. For new intake, I'll do this every session, and it doesn't need to be, you know, a huge amount of time. Let's give this, say, 10 minutes, and I'll tag that with new intake. It doesn't need to be a huge amount of time, but it's just going to work really hard as a drill that quietly sets an expectation for a skater to perform very advanced things in a very simple way. Okay, cool. If you like that drill, sign up to LessonStack. I'm going to make it public, so you'll find it on the Discover page, and you can just drag and drop it into your lesson plans. I'm actually also going to drag and drop this into, let's see, Derby 101. And if I go to my stacks, I will have in here Skating 101. I'm going to add activities, add push-pull. And now if I go to my teams, I've got this Derby 101 team, and I've got a series in here called Skating 101, and this is going to be a fresh meat intake course. And I'm actually going to add this push-pull to every session because I think it's a really important drill, and it just covers so much in such a kind of subtle way. It works really, really hard for you as a coach. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.